Welcome to day 2 of Bootcamp for Learning Automation. Today we are going to discuss another important topic, which is XPaths. So we will learn today how to write an XPath. One thing which we should all be aware about the HTML is that HTML is written using the tree hierarchy structure. So if you would see, like, we have at top we have the HTML tag, below it we have the head tag and body tag, and within body tag we have all the other tags we write for designing our web page. So if you would see, like, we have a div tag here, and within it again there are other child elements here. So while writing XPaths, we will have to consider the hierarchical structure we have for the elements, and accordingly we have to write the XPath. So let's just first touch upon the Absolute-XPath. So what is Absolute-XPath? So let's say that we want to write an XPath for this user email. So let's see, we have the inspect option. Once you do it, you can go here and then there is an option to copy, and it says copy XPath or copy full XPath. Let's copy this and let's place it here. So if you would see how long this absolute path is, right? And it is covering through all the hierarchy, right from the HTML tag till the input tag, till this tag, whatever hierarchy it has to follow. So it is saying that go within that, start from root, go to HTML tag, within it we'll find a body tag, and then we will find the div tag where there could be multiple, so go into the first div tag and so on, and then in the end reach to this input tag. This way of writing an XPath is not recommended at all. We should avoid writing these kind of XPaths. The second type of XPaths are relative-XPaths. Using the relative-XPath, we can directly reach to that element using the properties of that element. So let's see how. We follow a format to write the relative-XPath. And the format is, over here we have to start with double slash, then we have to write the name of the tag we want to go into, and then use the attribute, the properties of that element, and specify a value for it. And once we try to search using this XPath, it will directly reach to that element. So let's try it for this input ID. So let's try to write it. So we can do it via this way. We do a Control F and let's try to write it. So we'll do input, and after this we will do @ and now we will be writing the attribute for it, and we will use the ID attribute and the value user ID. So let's write it. So @ID equals to single quotes and user, capital I and D. You see, it matches and it highlights the element it was able to identify using this XPath. So similarly, let's say if you want to try it for the any other type of elements, let's say for a drop down, let's find a drop down here. So we have a drop down here, right? So let's try to just first go to this. So it says it is a select tag with the name cars. Let's try to use this. So we'll do this, double slash select attribute, will use name, and we will use cars as the value for it. See, it was able to identify that element now using the relative-XPath. So the basic idea is that we need to remember the format of how to write the relative-XPath. It starts with double slash, then the name of the tag, then the brackets, and then @ sign, and then the attribute which we want to use. Like in case we are using name, we have to provide name equal single quote or double quotes, and then the value for it. In our case, we used cars. Let's say that we want to use of two attributes to identify the element. How we can do that? Let's try that. To support such requirement, we can use the conditional operators like and or. So let's say that we want to write an relative-XPath for this email element. So we'll do, let's say, inspect, and you can see, right, we have multiple attributes with this input tag. Let's try to use two of them using the AND operator. So like in case of this AND condition, it is checking that give me an input tag which has both these properties, ID and title, with these values. So whatever matches to this, whatever elements matches to this XPath, those will be written. Similarly, if we start using OR here, you see it is saying that give me an input tag which has either this attributes or this attribute or both, right? And it is giving us that element. Let me use one more example for OR. So we can use this XPath. Here we are using OR operator again, and we are using this attribute with the value and also this attribute with the value. This is the helper method which the XPaths provide. So we'll talk about this next. But over here you can see, right, it is returning us two elements which match this XPath. One is this user ID. It has the ID as user ID, and it also has this class which is starting with this selectors text, right? Let's see what else it is returning. So if you click on it, you can see it is returning us this input tag also, and you can see that it is an input tag. It has this class which starts with selector, but it doesn't have this ID, right? But it is still returning us because we have used the OR condition. So if the input tag has even one of these attributes, it will be returned by this XPath using the OR condition. So let's see the helper methods which the XPath provide. So using these methods, it provides us a convenience to write XPaths for some tricky situations. So let's see how we have to write the XPath using this helper methods. And this is the format for it. We have to start with a double slash, then the name of the HTML tag, then the bracket, then the name of the methods, and then the bracket, and then the attribute name, comma, and then the value. Let's look at some of the examples. So some of the helper methods are normalize-space, contains, and start with. Let's look at them one by one. Let's start with the contains method. So let me write an XPath which is double slash div contains, then the attribute name which is class, and the value for it which is drop down. In this case, you can see that we are getting two elements. One is this div class drop down, and the other is this one, div class drop down content. So if you would understand, right, it is trying to find us the div tags where the class attribute has drop down text in its value. So in this case, this also has the drop down. So this also has the drop down text in the value, and over here also we have the drop down text, but the complete value is drop down hyphen content. But using this contains method, we were able to find out this tag also. So the next helper method we will be checking is starts with. So what it does is, like, it says that okay, give me the element of a div tag where the class attribute has a value starting with this text which is drop down. So again, once we click on the enter, you can see that we are able to find two of the elements. In both the elements, both are starting with drop down, this one and this one. The next thing which we need to understand is the normalize-space helper method. But for this, we first need to understand how do we work with the text which are placed within the tags. Example, like this h4 tag has memory test as a text within these tags, right? And let's say that we want to write an XPath for it. We'll have to make use of this text, and there's a different way to write the XPath when it comes to writing the XPath using text. So the format to write an XPath for it is this, where again we start with double slash, the name of the tag, and then the bracket, and then we use this helper method which is text, and after it we write a equal sign and then the single quote or double quotes and the text which we want to search for. So let's say that we want to write it for memory test. Let's try to write here. So let me first copy this text here and double slash h4 text equals to single quotes and then this, and then you can see that it matches to this element. Now one thing which we need to care about is that the text which we place under these single quotes have to match with the exact value which is under these tags. Only then it will return that element. Let's say if I remove this t in the end, you see there is no match. So we have to be careful. Similarly, if we, let's say that we have some trailing spaces after it, which is, let's say, test and double space after the test. Now let's say that if we write test here, you see, now it doesn't find this value. Now to handle such cases, we have normalize-space helper method. So using this, we can avoid the trailing or the leading spaces in the text, and we write XPath something like this. Again, we have the HTML tag and then the helper method, but within this helper method we use this format. So the example for this is this: /h4 normalize-space bracket then text. So the bracket ends for normalize-space here itself, and then equal sign and the text we want to search for. So now I hope now you understand what is the use of normalize-space, and we can even use contains and start with something like this. So again, we have to just make sure that we are writing the XPath using the correct strategy. So over here the contains uses the same approach. We have this attribute here, but here the attribute is not starting with @. Here we are just writing text and the brackets after it, then a comma and then the value for it, similar to what we write using the method names, right? Now the next important thing is to understand about the dynamic methods which the XPath provide, and why these are required. These could come handy in case of complex scenarios. And how it is used is, it is used to find elements by using the relationship of that element with other elements. What could be those relationships? You can find a sibling for an element, you can find a parent, a child, an ancestor, or a descendant to a particular element. When you are trying to write an XPath using such strategies, right, where you want to find a relative element with respect to another element, then in those cases these dynamic methods will come handy, and they make use of the tree hierarchical structure of these HTML tags. And this is the list of those dynamic methods. Now I have tried to categorize them on the basis of the functioning. So let's see them one by one. So I have written an XPath for this drop down, and over here I have reached to one of the options within it, which is Volvo. Now let's say that we want to find the option elements which comes after this Volvo options in this HTML page. So what we can do is, we have to write / then this dynamic method, then double colons, and then the XPath for the elements we want to identify. So in this case we want to search the option tag, so let's only write options here. Now you will see that it is returning us 7 elements, right, with this XPath. So what are these? So one is this, second this, third this, and you can see that in the HTML page there are more which comes after these options, but those are not in this select tag, those are coming after this. So let's see those: second, third, this is the fourth one, right? See, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. Let's try to generalize the format here. So what we are trying to do is, we have to write the first XPath, right, and then the / and then the dynamic method, whatever we want to use. Like in our case we were using following, we placed it there, then double colon, and then the next XPath we want to search on. So following returned us all the option tags which came after this particular tag. Now let's say that we want only the siblings of that tag, right, like these values like Saab, Opel and Audi. So what we'll do is, we will use following sibling, and now you will see that it is returning us only 3 options, which are Saab, Opel and Audi, right? So I hope now you understand the difference between the two. So let's move to the next category. So preceding, ancestor and parent. So these 3 works on the HTML in a way that they find the elements which would have came before the element we are trying to write an XPath for. So let's say that if we write an XPath 1, then we use / and then the preceding and then the XPath, then it will try to find this XPath in the HTML DOM, but in the earlier section of the HTML DOM, not after him but before it. Let's see with the help of an example. So over here I have written this XPath which is pointing to this option tag within this short drop down. So we are pointing to 50 value here, right? Now let's say that we write here preceding option, right? Now what it should do is, it should identify all the options which are coming before this option element here. So the first is Volvo, Saab, Opel, Audi, and then 10, 25, and then the next one is the 51, right? So it found out all the option tags which were coming before this tag. Now the next part is the ancestor part. So what ancestor means here is like any tag which follow the tree hierarchy and is definitely an ancestor for the XPath one. Now similarly, let's say that we take this XPath again, the 50, and we want to see that we want to find any of the ancestor of it. Like select is an ancestor for all this option tag, label is the grand ancestor for this, and similarly the other tags which are following a tree structure. So let's try to find this label ancestor. So what we'll do is we will do / ancestor ::, and then the label. You see, it found out this. Let's say that we change this label to select. So return the first ancestor of select tag. The next part is the parent part. So as the name suggests, it will only find the parent tag. So in this case, again we are on this option tag, and let us write / parent ::, and then the select. So it was able to reach the immediate parent of this option tag, which is this select. Let's say that we want to find label this time for the parent. Let's see what will the behavior. Now we have written label. Let's search. You see, it is unable to find because label is not the parent for this option tag. This is definitely an ancestor but not the parent, so it will not return it. Now let's move on to the next category, which is descendant and child. So over here, as the name suggests, right, whatever XPath we are on, we will be trying to go to the descendants or the child of that XPaths. We will not be moving back, but rather we are going forward, but again using the hierarchy, the tree hierarchy structure. So currently we are on this div tag, which is pointing to this section over here. Now let's try to reach this option tag here. We've written / descendant and the XPath for this option tag. Now we are able to reach here because when we were here at the div tag on the top, it was able to find this option tag because this is a descendant of that div tag. Because using the tree hierarchy structure, this particular tag falls under that div tag, and that's the reason it was able to find it. Similarly, we can use the child dynamic method using the same approach. So let's discuss the last dynamic method, which is self. So let's understand with the help of an example. But in the crux, what it does is it points to the XPath one locator only. So we have written here an XPath which is pointing to this element. So here we have used an asterisk which says that okay, find this attribute with this value for any of the tags, right? And we were able to find one, and it has the table tag. Now what we can do is we can write self : table. So this will only return me the element which has this property, and it's a table tag. So this is how you can use the self dynamic method. So the last thing as part of the XPath we want to discuss is array indexing. So let's say that we have written an XPath for this drop down, and over here we have multiple options tags. Now let's say that we want to traverse to these options using the indexing strategy. So this is placed at index 1, index 2, index 3, index 4. So let's see how we can, if you want to use such strategy, how we can use it. So what we can do is / option, then open the brackets, and then write the index number for it. So index number here starts with 1, not 0. So let's write 3 here. So what 3 does is it points to this third option tag within the select tag. Now we also have some helper methods here which we can use. So let's say that we don't know how many elements we have under the select, but we know that we want to point to the last element in that array. So what it is doing is it is saying we have written option, then this method last and the brackets. Now it is pointing to the last option tag within the select tag. Now we can use this. Let's extend this a step further. Now let's say that we want to move to the second last. So what we can do is we can do -1. Now this will point to this third, which is the second last value. So last value -1. So last value was 4 and -1, which becomes 3, right? So it reached to the third element. Similarly, if you do with 2, it will reach to the second element there. Now there is one more thing which we can do is, let's say that we don't care about the value, but we just want to move to the whatever element is present on any specific position. So if you want to use that, what we can do is there is another helper method, position. So if you write position here, and then give the position value. Let's say that we give 2 here, equal, and then the value. So it is pointing to the option element which is placed at the second position. Similarly, what we can do is we can find for the third position and so on. So this is how you can use indexing and these helper methods to index through the arrays. And this is what you all need to know about XPaths. One of the advantage of writing a good XPath is that it avoids your test to go into a flaky state because of the locators being changed on the UI. I hope you enjoyed the session today and would have learned something new. If you did, please subscribe the channel and do share the content with others as well.